Saul's name means he asked. So in the Hebrew. And now, Saul, and this point in the Bible is so important. Again, I hate that we're shortchanging Samuel. I mean, you can make a case he's one of the most important people in all the Bible. Samuel was the kingmaker. He was the transition figure out of that dark time. Such an important person in the Bible. However, in the plan of salvation, in the line to Jesus, the kingship is so important. This is a critical moment in the Bible. Because what did we see in Judges? When Israel had no what? King. No king. And so now this is going to become one of the most important aspects in all the Bible. And it's going to define and point to the Messiah. The word we get in Hebrew is a word translated in the Greek for Christ. That's Messiah, anointed one. This is critical because it connects us to the King of Kings, Jesus. Now, these kings between Saul and before Jesus, these kings in the Old Testament, we know most of them were no good. Only a few were really, but it was this, what it was all pointing to. So, and by the way, remember when Samuel's he's so personally offended or troubled by Israel wanting a king because they've rejected his leadership. In essence, they don't want God's leadership. He's the prophet of God. And remember what God tells Samuel? They've not rejected you. See, there's the key. That's the problem. Not them asking for a king. And so anyway, Samuel, this sets up the story now of, again, we've seen this area, Mizpah, Gibeah, remember? We've seen that area. We're down here in the southern part of Judah, Jerusalem. Here's Ephraim and the valley of Ephraim, right? That's what we talked about. Shiloh is where the tabernacle was. Gilgal, in just a minute, we're going to see that Saul is supposed to wait for Samuel to make a sacrifice. So this is kind of the area that we're in here, okay? And so in tribe of Benjamin, right in here. And we've talked about the tribe of Benjamin. So look at verse 1 of 1 Samuel 9. Again, Samuel the last judge. Saul will be from the tribe of Benjamin, and this will be about 1050 BC. Each of the first kings of Israel reigned 40 years. So it's pretty easy to 40, 40, 40. Saul reigns 40 years. David, his first 7 years, he's only king of Judah. The other tribes do not recognize him because they're loyal to the house of Saul. I'm watching the Amazon series right now, The House of Saul. House of David, I'm sorry, House of David. They're talking about the two houses, though, the House of Saul and the House of David. And now it's not like The Chosen, like where they're really, it's different. It's more of a, but they take a lot more liberties, and but it's pretty good. I'm enjoying it for the most part. There's some things I really like, but David's first 7 years, only Judah will recognize him as king. There's civil war going to go on between Saul, his house, and David and his loyal troops. After Saul dies, then David for 33 years is the king of Israel. And then, of course, Solomon will reign 40 years. So you got 40, 40, 40. It's kind of easy to remember there. But look what it says here. There was a Benjamite, a man of standing, whose name was Kish. And we read about that Kish had a son, verse 2, named Saul. Now look, what's the description here? A handsome young man. Could be found anywhere in Israel, and he was a head taller than anyone else. And so what is stressed here about Saul at the beginning? His appearance. What about his appearance? Of course, he's handsome. Do people like to follow handsome, attractive people? That has been going on for a long time. Still going on. People like to follow attractive, handsome people. Sure, it's kind of vain. But people don't want to pay money to watch ugly people in movies. I could just look at myself every day if I wanted to, just see ordinary, average looking, but I want to, and so, anyway, and then his what? He's head and shoulders. So his appearance, by the fact that he's a tall man, people are already looking at what? Looking up to him. So his physical appearance, his presence, it puts him in a superior position. And so we see that here. Now beginning in verse 3, I don't read all this here. I just want to kind of. The donkeys belonging to Saul's father, Kish, were lost. Now, I want to set this up. We got to be careful. I've talked about we have to be careful moralizing the stories of the Bible. That is, we act like the point that it's being made is moral points. We're supposed to learn the moral lessons from Esther and learn the moral lessons from. We got to be careful with that. Moralizing the stories. The Bible, these stories are not. That's not the primary reason they're in there. So we struggle with, well, why is Jephthah in the Bible, the Hebrews 11? Why is Samson in the, and so we start trying to reach and find every, Esther, we've got to moralize that she's a young, an example of, and so we start, Vashti, we try to find her because she wouldn't dance before the king. Well, she's probably doing that out of saving her life. She doesn't want to be handled in that drunken festival. It's probably less likely of a moral principle and more that she doesn't want to be subjected to that. And so we got to be careful moralizing these stories. They're here to tell us, and what we need to see with these stories with Saul is a contrast between Saul and David. You have to see that through these stories. There is a contrast that the writer is making. And I've been guilty of doing a little bit of this with Saul, trying to really highlight the good qualities that are, at least early on, look to be there. I'm not so sure I see many of those good qualities anymore, including this one. His dad's lost his donkeys. And they said, son, take one of the servants with you and go look for the donkeys. So he passed through the hill country of Ephraim and through the area around Seshelah, but they did not find them. And they keep going further and they don't find them. They pass through the territory of Benjamin, but they did not find them. Saul finally reached this district of Suph, and he said to his, come, let's go back, or my father will stop thinking about the donkeys and stop worrying about us. Now, again, we moralize that and we say, well, Saul is really thinking about his father. He's a considerate, first of all, he's not a young man here, but nonetheless, I want you to think about a contrast here between Saul and David. Saul's attitude seems to be a little less on his father and more, which is his character, which is going to be cowardly. There's just no way around it. Saul's cowardly. And his attitude seems to be more, can't find him. I'm done looking. Now, he mentions his father, so we don't want to, shortchange that at all. But he is, they've wandered off. Whatever happens to him happens. Now, contrast that with David. What was David put in charge of by his father? What does David say to Saul later on? with Goliath. Now, you tell me, who's in more peril? Saul wandering around an area that he's somewhat familiar with, but looking for his father's animals. You know, it's a little unknown. You don't know everybody, every place. Or David, who says he went and got the sheep from the what?
Lion's mouth, from the mouth. The bear's
That's right. Right, yeah. Bear and the lion. Saul seems to be, whatever. They're gone. Dad'll get to worrying about. Let's head back. David says what? I went and got the sheep. I stood in the... So right out of the gates, you're seeing a difference between the two. And we'll see that cowardness just kind of continue with Saul here in this regard. But you got to see that connection in this regard. Okay, so they're going to, basically, I don't want to read everything here. He's going to meet with Samuel. So they're going to connect. They're going to meet here. Samuel is what's called a seer. Whoever is recorded 1 Samuel, they say that these prophets used to be called seers. And so he is going to meet. It's actually the servant who's going to suggest it and say, look, in this town there's a man of God. He's respected. Everything he says comes true. Let's go and see if he'll show us the way. So it's the servant who kind of knows all about this. And so, and Saul will show respect to the prophet, and they'll, with bringing an honor of a gift. And so they will encounter, meet each other, and so they're going to do that. And verse 11, as they were going up to the hill, they met some young women coming out to draw water, and they said, "Is the seer here?" "He is," they said. "Hurry now, he's just come to our town today, for the people have a sacrifice at a high place." And so they went to the town. As they were entering it, there was Samuel, verse 14, coming toward them on his way up to a high place. Now the day before Saul came, the Lord had revealed this to Samuel. "About this time tomorrow I'll send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him ruler over my people Israel. He will deliver them from the hand of the Philistines. I have looked on my people, for their cry has reached me." Remember, the Philistines are just the real sore spot for Israel at this point. They are just crushing Israel. They are fierce warriors, and so this is a big problem. Then Samuel caught sight of Saul. The Lord said to him, "This is the man I spoke to you. He will govern my people." And so they're going to have this encounter, and this is going to set up this three stage of being anointed of the kingship. There's three parts of this. So there's the anointing, and this involves a private ceremony where Samuel will anoint the king, the next king. Then there will be a demonstration that this is indeed the leader of God, the one that we should follow. There'll be some sort of a public, obvious sign, demonstration that gives confirmation. This is who we should follow. Wow. Then there's the coronation. That this is obvious the Spirit of God is upon this man. And that's kind of the way it's supposed to work. And that's what's going to kind of set up chapter 10 when you get over here in chapter 10. Samuel there in verse 1 of 1 Samuel 10 will take the flask of oil, and he'll anoint Saul's head and kiss him. "Has not the Lord appointed you ruler over his inheritance?" Now he's going to give a series of instructions and kind of confirmations that are very detailed. When you leave here, you're going to meet two men near Rachel's tomb. Rachel, of course, was the favored wife of Jacob. She produced two children, you remember? Joseph, and don't forget Benjamin. And those were Joseph, of course, was very much favored because they were from his favorite wife, Rachel, the one that he loved. And so They'll say to the donkeys you set out to look for have been found. Now your father has stopped thinking about them and is worried about you. He is asking, what shall I do about my son? Then you will go from there until you reach the great tree of Tabor. 3 men going up to worship at Bethel will meet you. One is carrying 3 goats, another 3 loaves of bread. I mean, look at another a skin of wine. They will greet you, and you will offer the 2 loaves of bread, which you will accept from them. Then after that, you will go to Gibeah of God, where there is a Philistine outpost. That's very important. As you approach the town, you will meet a procession of prophets coming down from the high place. They'll have all these instruments playing, and they'll be prophesying. The Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you, and you will prophesy with them, and you will be changed into a different person. Once these signs are fulfilled, do whatever your hands find to do, for God is with you. Now, there's some vagueness here, but the indication seems to be this is all going to happen right near a garrison of Philistines, an outpost. Whatever your hands find you to do. Well, what do you think? Imagine what he could do to show that the Spirit of God is upon him, that could demonstrate, take the outpost. Matter of fact, that's exactly what's going to happen later on in chapter 13. But it's going to be Jonathan who does it, not Saul. And it's just kind of interesting here that it seems to be what a great, the Spirit of God, everything is upon you. Do whatever your hands find to do, whatever is required of you to do. And go down ahead of me. Then he gives them instructions to Gilgal, and I will surely come down to you to sacrifice burnt offerings and fellowship offerings. But you must wait 7 days until I come to you and tell you what to do. Now that'll set up later on when Saul is going to take on the Amalekites. He's going to take on, and the people are getting anxious to fight. And Samuel told Saul, wait 7 days. I will come at Gilgal and I will make a sacrifice for us before we go to war. And remember, Samuel is what? Delayed. And that's when Saul will take. But you remember he did that because the people were beginning to leave. And that we'll talk about that. That will directly tie back into his cowardness. That's a lack of leadership. Well, the people want this. Well, what's a strong leader do? No, doesn't give it to them. The worker, the owner, we've called you here because we demand this. I'll tell you what you do. You get back to work or I'll fire you. I mean, there's times you got to have strong leadership. And when the people are wanting to get off course, yeah, you bring them back on course. But Saul doesn't. Remember, he was told to utterly destroy the Amalekites? And remember, what's he blamed? The reason he kept the king and the animals, the people wanted what? He passes it off on the people. What is that? That's cowardly. This is DNA seems to be through Saul. And so Saul here is interesting enough. There's no demonstration. There's no demonstration here. Then you get this public, they're going to make him king now publicly. And so this is an interesting story. As Saul turned to leave Samuel, God changed Saul's heart, and all these signs were fulfilled that day. When he and his servant arrived at Gibeah, the procession of prophets met him. The Spirit of God came upon him. Okay, he joined them. He prophesied. Look what happens here. When all those who had formerly known him saw him prophesying with the prophets, they asked of each other, what is this that has happened to the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets? A man who lived there answered, and who is their father? So it became a saying, is Saul also among the prophets? After Saul stopped prophesying, he went to the high place. Now Saul's uncle asked him and his servant, so Saul's going to get back now to his father. Look here. Where have you been? Looking for the donkeys, he said. But when we saw them, they were not to be found. We went to Samuel. Saul's uncle said to him, "Tell us what Samuel said to you." Saul replied, "He assured us that the donkeys had been found," but he did not tell his uncle what? What Samuel had said about the kingship. He doesn't tell. He doesn't say what has happened to him. So Samuel's going to summon the people of Israel at Mizpah and said, "This is what the Lord God of Israel says. I brought you out of Egypt. Okay, delivered you. All the kings oppressed you, but now you've rejected your God who saves you out of all the disasters. And you've said, 'Appoint us a king.' So present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and clan." When Samuel had all Israel come forward by tribes, the tribe of Benjamin was taken by lot. Then they brought forward the tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan. They're trying to see which one's been anointed. But Saul, Saul is he's not telling anybody. Then they brought him forward. Finally, Saul, son of Kish, was taken. But when they looked for him, look here, he was not to be found. Look at verse 21. So they inquired further of the Lord, "Has the man come here yet?" And the Lord said, "Yes, he has hidden himself among the supplies," or the baggage, some of the translations will say. And they ran out and brought him out, and he stood among the people, and he was a head taller than all the others. And Samuel said, "Do you see the man that the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him." I want you to think about, and I've taught it this way, but I don't teach it that way anymore because I was moralizing it. The way we've taught it mostly is that, Saul has humility. And a leader, to be effective, needs to be humble. And so Saul is he's got good qualities here. He cares about his father. He's humble. No. David, and I want you to note the connection. The word is the same in the word. The same word is used. The word is supplies or the baggage Saul was hiding in. When David is, do you remember, going to be sent by his father? The text says when he hears Goliath, what Goliath was saying, he leaves his baggage and he goes to meet who? Basically, Goliath. Saul, cowardly, in fear, backtracks. But David defends his life for the sheep against the lion and the bear. And David, when he shows up at the battlefield, he leaves his supplies and he steps forward to the fight. The contrast is very clear in the scripture here. The difference between the two men. Again, that's why we've got to be careful about moralizing these stories and trying to find the good. I don't think that's what we need to find here. We need to see the contrast between who they thought was going to be this great, wonderful, powerful leader and who they end up are really going to get that will be the one they need. And so it's an interesting setup here. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
God has also drawn a correlation, or a contrast rather,
Yeah.
between Saul, who would be the first king of Israel, and Jesus, who would be the last king of Israel. Because in Isaiah 53:2, it says, "For he grew up before him like a young plant and like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him, and no beauty that we should desire him." I mean, so if you look at the prophecy about Jesus, it's a complete contradiction of what is Saul.
So looks can be deceiving. Saul, everything looks right. He's handsome. He's big. He's head and shoulders taller. Everything seems to be, this is the guy. Everything seems to be pointing towards him. And that, we got to be careful with that, right? From man's perspective. Because, when Samuel will then go to anoint the next king, which will be David, he sent, and Jesse his sons come out, and he doesn't even have David out there. David's out in the field. And Samuel just goes down the line looking up and down these boys. And he says, surely this is the what? The Lord's anointed. But the Lord tells Samuel what? Do not look on the outward. Man looks on the outward. I look on the what? On the heart. So as Matt kind of jumped and really did a good job. No, you're great, buddy. Jesus outwardly looked nothing. What did you just say, Red?
That he would, nothing that would draw you to him.
There was no, and I understand, and believe me, I don't want them to make the Chosen movies, the series, with an ugly Jesus. Okay, I don't want that. I want Jonathan, right, to be the guy because I think he's attractive, but I don't think it's over the top that he's that handsome. But I want people to watch the show. I want people to, but Jesus was not a physical draw for people by his appearance. He wasn't. Yeah. And so Jesus didn't look the part, right?
You saw, if you look at this, so if you were to see Jesus in a crowd, you wouldn't know him from Adam.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't what he looked like that made him stand out.
Right.
It's what he did.
Right. It's who he was. And David is the smallest. He's the youngest. He's the shepherd boy. They gave that job to that's right. And yet David has within him what? That spirit, that heart. What's he described? What's Samuel? Remember what the Lord says? When Saul, I've rejected you and I've chosen, Samuel tells him the Lord has chosen a man after his own heart. Now, does that mean sinful? No sin. No, David struggled. But David's heart was towards God. David's heart was with the Lord. We can do it. And that's what he tells there when he comes to the battlefield with Goliath and the Philistines. He says, who is this uncircumcised Philistine that defies the Lord? And it says again, I want you to note there, he leaves his baggage and he goes to the front. Saul is hiding in the baggage. It's not a humility that we're to honor that. It's a cowardness. And that's just the truth of the matter. And so that's obviously changed some of my lessons that I used to try to find the good in him. But I just want you to see the contrast.
Robert?
Yes.
So did Saul not want to be king, or he didn't?
Yeah.
So why did he accept it?
That's a great question. I think people often seek things that are, they often accept things that they're not sure, that they're not, they enjoy the title maybe. They, I don't know. I think that's a great question about what this was. I don't think it's a matter of two, when the prophet shows up and does this, this is a man of God, the prophet of God. And so it's a Saul is supposed to contrast the king. What's setting all this up is the people. What do the people want out of their king? Well, let's go back to that. You have to interpret Saul in the context of what did the people demand? Why did they want a king? They wanted a strong person who would fight for them. They did not want to trust who? God. So Saul has to be interpreted in that context. So what did God give them? What they wanted. You want someone that looks the part? Here he is. Is he an actual true leader, man of my heart? No. Saul wasn't. David would be.
Kind of like if you were not very careful with your resume.
Yeah, that's right. Now, why'd God do it all that? Yeah. why'd God, and all that. And I get, yeah, Matt.
But the other thing about the Israelites is they were tired of having to do for themselves. I mean, because if you think about it, if you're following God, God puts responsibility on you. You have to be responsible for
Right.
your actions. But if you want a king, you want somebody to do for you.
Yeah, yeah.
You don't want to have to do for yourself. I mean, you see it you even see it today. People who want the government to do more and more for them,
Right.
which is human nature.
And let me say this, we're out of time, but when we make decisions out of fear, those decisions are usually not good. They were afraid, they would not trust God, and they made decisions based out of that. And that's never a good thing. And it's the same in leadership. A church might say, well, we need some elders. What are we going to do if we don't have elders? We only got... And I've seen that in churches. And out of that fear, you can start looking around in a church in the congregation going, well, Billy Joe Bob, he's here about most Sundays. He taught a class one time 10 years ago, and his kids, I think, are baptized, and I think he'd be a good leader. He runs a hardware store here in town, and right? Have you seen that happen in churches? Yeah. And we got to be careful out of fear and wait till we follow the direction of God, and God will provide. And God was going to provide. Israel they wouldn't trust him. So I think God said, you want it? Here you go. Here's Saul. And I'm not saying Saul did nothing, that he did nothing good. He fortified his position like any king would. He was they had warriors. They fought. I'm not saying Saul wasn't a warrior. I'm not saying he didn't, but it wasn't the king God wanted, and that was going to be in David ultimately. So, all right, we'll pick up there and get into the Saul stories that we know of, especially, and talk about that. And again, we'll be contrasting David, so be looking for that.